So here is your demo of the 6 L's method. We're going to start by loosening the soil. So you can see here I've got quite a few like lumps of soil, and I've got some leaves as well, and I just want to make this all kind of nice and flat and easier for the seeds to grow. So I'm just using my rake here to kind of break up the soil a little bit. Okay? You can do the whole bed, or you can just do the area you're going to sow. It's completely up to you. But you just want to kind of make that nice crumbly consistency, because if you've got too many stones or too many like big lumps of soil, your little seedlings might struggle a bit. So I'm just going to do this area here. The next thing then you want is you want to make a line. Now the reason we sow in lines is so we don't lose so we know what's a weed and what's a seedling, like an intentional seedling. So I've just got a piece of wood here that I'm just moving back and forth in the soil like that, and you can see there that it's made like a nice little line for me to sow along. Now I'm only going to sow one row of beetroot at the minute, but if I was to sow another, I'd just measure the gap between, and then I might create another line here, for example. But I'm going to do some successional sowing, so I'm going to leave a gap here to sow some more beetroot in a couple of weeks' time, just to kind of spread my harvest a bit. Okay, so you've done that. The next one then is lubricate. So you're just going to take your watering can, engage your flots, and just really listen to the sound of the water hitting the ground. Before we sow is because we don't want to dislodge any of the seeds. The next one is lay. So this is where we're going to lay our seedlings, or our seeds, sorry. So take a few in your hand, little shake before. I always love beetroot seeds, they're the weirdest looking things ever. Tip a few into your hand. Now bear in mind, you don't want to sow these too closely together, because the closer you sow them, the more you're going to have to thin out and chuck and get rid of, because you know you want your beetroots to grow to a fair size. So think about that as you're laying the seeds along the line. So on there. Obviously some of them may not germinate, so you may want to sow 2 at each position. It's completely up to you. Or you might just want to sow them a little bit closer together and then pick out the odd ones once you've done. Around here. Keeping an eye on where I got to. A couple fell out of my hand there. It's quite nice to be able to just kind of sow them along and feel the knobbliness of them and go back and sow a few more. But ultimately we don't want to waste our seeds, so I want to make sure we're sowing them sparingly. Got it down in my hand. The next thing you're going to do then is layer. And that is basically covering over the seeds that you've just sown with soil. Now, I'm going to choose some of this lovely dry soil. Well, I say dry, it's still quite wet, but it's not completely sodden, to go over the top. You can use the wet stuff, but obviously it's just wet, so you're just going to put mud. Okay? Much easier as the weather warms and the soil gets drier, this, because you'll have lots of dry soil to use. Now you're not covering them too heavily, but just enough to kind of stop any really heavy rain or wind dislodging them. Okay. And then the last thing is to label. Now there's 2 purposes there. Obviously you remember where you've sowed your line, and also to remember what you've sown. So if any little seedlings pop up in that line, you know that they're going to be your beetroot seedlings. If anything sort of pops up here or here, you know it's more likely to be a little annual weed, so you can just quickly pull that out before it grows too big. And that's it. Do come into the community and let us know what you're going to be direct sowing this season.